But how true are these claims? I'm Professor Retro, and today we're looking at some high-profile cases where video games were blamed for crimes. Daniel Petrick was a teenager from Wellington, Ohio, growing up in a fairly typical suburban setting. By all accounts, he was like many other teenagers, spending time with his friends, family, and increasingly his Xbox. Now, like many teenagers, Daniel developed a passion for gaming, but this just wasn't a pastime. His focus became laser sharp on one game in particular, Halo 3, released in 2007. Halo 3 was a blockbuster, drawing millions of fans worldwide, but for Daniel, the game became more than just a hobby. It became an obsession. Concerned about how much time he was spending in front of the screen, his parents decided to step in. They took away his gaming console, hoping to curb his dependence. But what started as a seemingly innocent measure to protect their son turned out to be something with a horrifying consequence. On October 20th, 2007, Daniel's parents, Mark and Susan Petrick, returned home to find their son waiting for them. Mark was a minister, deeply invested in his family and his community. But that night, as they entered, their son did something unthinkable. Daniel had secretly stolen his father's handgun. Driven by anger, obsession, or perhaps something more disturbing, he took the gun and opened fire on his parents as they sat down. Susan, his mother, was killed instantly. Mark, though gravely injured, survived. The crime shocked the community and made headlines nationwide. The media honed in on Daniel's obsession with Halo 3, with some outlets blaming violent video games as a contributing factor. However, prosecutors argued that Daniel's obsession had driven him to violence, with others pointing to underlying mental health struggles. At the trial, Daniel's defense argued that his brain was still developing, that his impulse control was limited, and that the violent themes of the game could have affected his state of mind. But despite these arguments, Daniel was ultimately found guilty. Daniel Petrick's story is a haunting reminder of what can happen when a pastime turns into an obsession. It's a story with no winners, a family torn apart, a young man facing a lifetime behind bars. For many, it's a wake-up call to consider the role gaming plays in our lives, and the importance of striking a balance. This is a disturbing case of family violence that shocked the small town of Moses Lake, Washington in 2013. This is the story of Nathan Brooks, a 14-year-old boy who made a choice that led to an unthinkable consequence for his family and community. Nathan Brooks was, by all accounts, a seemingly typical teenager. Those who knew him described him as quiet and somewhat withdrawn, but no one could have predicted the horrific act he would commit. Nathan's parents, Jonathan and Elizabeth Brooks, were said to be strict and upheld high standards for their son. Family members later recounted that Nathan often felt his parents didn't understand him or strained the relationship. Friends and neighbors observed that in the months leading up to the incident, Nathan became more isolated and began showing signs of resentment towards his parents, but no one realized how deeply those feelings were. According to police report, Nathan's actions that night were shockingly premeditated. His motive, he claimed, was rooted in resentment. His parents had recently grounded him due to behavioral issues and the disapproval of certain choices he was making. On March 8th, Nathan waited until his parents had gone to bed. Then in a calm and calculated manner, he used a firearm from their home to shoot his mother and father in their bedroom. Both parents died from their injuries. Nathan then attempted to cover his tracks by staging elements to make it look like a robbery. When investigators questioned Nathan, he initially claimed that the murders were a robbery gone wrong. However, inconsistencies in his story led detectives to probe further. And after a lengthy interrogation, Nathan eventually confessed to the crime. The confession shocked everyone who knew of the family. It was almost impossible to believe that a 14-year-old had committed such an unthinkable act against his own parents. His motive, as he explained to the authorities, was a mixture of anger, resentment, and a desire to be free from his parents' rules. However, due to the severity of the crime, Nathan Brooks was charged as an adult in the state of Washington. His trial brought intense scrutiny to the legal system, which debates over whether juveniles should be tried as adults in such cases. The tragedy of Nathan Brooks' case reminds us the importance of mental health, especially in teenagers. In hindsight, there may have been warning signs that Nathan's growing isolation and resentment, but in many cases, these signs are often hidden or misunderstood. In the small, quiet town of Newtown, Connecticut, on December 14, 2012, an unspeakable tragedy struck. The event left deep emotional scars on families, the community, and people all across the nation. Sandy Hook Elementary was a school that represented the community's hopes and dreams for its youngest generation. Teachers, administrators, and families came together each day, as they did on December 14th, 2012, a day that started like any other until everything changed. At approximately 9:30 a.m., a gunman entered Sandy Hook Elementary and carried out one of the most deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. Tragically, 20 children and 6 school staff members lost their lives. The culprit, Adam Lanza, the 20-year-old responsible for the attack, was a former student at Sandy Hook. Investigators following the tragedy tried to uncover why Lanza committed such a heinous act. Experts pointed to various factors, including mental health challenges, social isolation, and other complex issues. Reports revealed that Lanza struggled with mental health challenges from a young age, including possible autism spectrum disorder and severe social anxiety. Some experts have speculated that these factors, combined with the fascination with violence, may have contributed to his actions. However, it's important to remember that mental health conditions do not inherently lead to violent behavior. Following the shooting, an extensive investigation was conducted by both local authorities and the FBI. They found evidence suggesting that Lanza had planned the attack meticulously. Reports of his internet history showed he had researched other mass shootings and had isolated himself almost completely in the years leading up to the incident. Violent video games are said to have inspired Lanza's crime spree. He was a frequent first-person shooter fan, known for enjoying Call of Duty for hours on end. While he did not own a firearm license, he had extensive training using one due to range time. The boy was said to be mentally disturbed, suffering from a variety of mental health issues. To understand this next case fully, we need to start with some background on Nicholas Cruz. He was born on September 24, 1998, and was adopted as an infant. He had troubled childhood marked by behavioral issues and a series of disciplinary incidents both at home and at school. Cruz struggled academically and socially, exhibiting disturbing behavior from a young age. Over time, he was diagnosed with several mental health conditions, including depression and ADHD. His teachers and classmates noted his fascination with guns and violence, leading to multiple suspensions and ultimately expulsion from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. That all changed on February 14, 2018, when Cruz returned to high school with a semi-automatic rifle. Over the course of a few minutes, he opened fire on students and staff. Police arrived on the scene quickly, but by then, the damage had been done. Cruz was apprehended shortly afterwards. Following the shooting, Cruz was charged with 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. He pleaded guilty to all charges in October of 2021. And a lengthy sentencing trial began. The jury ultimately recommended a life sentence without parole, a decision that sparked significant debate across the country. The tragic event brought attention to significant gaps in school security and mental health systems. Many asked, how could someone with such a history have access to firearms? Although not really discussed in this case much, but there's evidence of Cruz playing a lot of video games, most notably Call of Duty, where it is shown in court documents that Cruz wrote in his words, "Die, die, die," in his story for his language class. And when asked about it, he said it came from his Call of Duty game booklet. In 2005, a crime shocked a small Alabama town and later the entire nation. A teenager named Devin Moore, just 18 years old, brutally murdered 3 police officers in a quiet police station in Fayetteville, Alabama. But this case took an unexpected turn when Moore's lawyers argued that one of the major culprits was a video game. Grand Theft Auto Vice City, known for its violence, controversy, and the freedom it gives players to wreak havoc in a digital world. It's a game that's been blamed for everything from minor delinquency to serious crime. But could a video game really have such an impact? Devin Moore was, by most accounts, a normal teenager, growing up in Fayetteville, Alabama. Moore didn't have a history of violent behavior or any major red flags. He had a tough home life, which unfortunately led to him bouncing around in foster care, but otherwise there was no signs of what was to come. At the age of 18, Moore enlisted in the Air Force, but while waiting for his assignment when the incident occurred, in the meantime Moore developed a deep interest in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, reportedly spending countless hours playing the game. His defense attorneys would later argue that he'd become obsessed, unable to separate the game's fictional violence from reality. On June 7, 2003, Moore was arrested for a minor offense, suspected car theft. He was brought into the Fayetteville police station where he was initially calm, but that soon changed. Because, without warning, Moore attacked Officer Arnold Strickland, grabbed his service weapon, and shot him, and then proceeded to shoot two other officers, James Crump and Ace Mueller. In cold blood, Moore took a police car and then fled the scene, but he was later captured without incident. The brutal crime shocked the town and left three families devastated. The question in everyone's mind was what could have driven someone to do something so senseless. During Moore's trial, his defense team argued something unprecedented. They claimed that Grand Theft Auto Vice City was a contributing factor to Moore's violent behavior. He argued that the game's realism, its focus on killing law enforcement, and Moore's extensive time playing it had influenced him to commit the crime. The prosecution, however, argued that Moore knew exactly what he was doing and was fully aware of the consequences of his actions. They claimed that blaming a video game was an excuse to avoid responsibility. The trial caught the attention of the media nationwide. Major networks, newspapers, and talk shows debated the role of violent video games with Grand Theft Auto at the center. Some argued that games like Vice City desensitized young players to violence, encouraging risky and even criminal behavior. Others believed that was a scapegoat and that the problem was far more complex. This became a flashpoint for both sides of the argument. Parents, teachers, and some psychologists warned about the potential harm of violent video games. Meanwhile, gamers, developers, and First Amendment advocates argued that video games were simply a form of entertainment, and that the blame was being unfairly placed on the gaming industry. In 2005, Devin Moore was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to death. The judge ruled that Moore's actions were intentional, and that the jury rejected the idea that a video game could be responsible. However, despite the conviction, the debate didn't end there. The families of the victims even filed a lawsuit against Rockstar Games, the publisher of Grand Theft Auto Vice City, along with Sony and the retailers who sold Moore the game. So what was the outcome? Well, ultimately, the lawsuit didn't succeed, but it opened up the door to new conversations about regulation, responsibility, and the potential impact of violent media. To this day, the argument over whether violent video games contribute to real-world violence remains unresolved. Scientific studies have offered conflicting results, some suggesting a minor increase in aggression, while others show no correlation to violent video games. So, did Grand Theft Auto really cause this? That's a question that may never have simple answers. Devin Moore was responsible for his actions, but his case raised important questions about the influence of media on young minds. Questions we're all still trying to answer today. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Can video games like GTA really influence people to commit crimes, or are they just being used as a convenient scapegoat? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into gaming's biggest controversies. Until next time, keep gaming responsibly, and remember, the pixels on the screen don't define your reality.